Alright, so this was me back in October of 2024, 180 pounds. 6 months later, I went down to around 145, 144 was my leanest, as you can see in these pictures. And I'm making this video because I want to show you guys and teach you guys mistakes that I learned along the way and what I'm going to do differently next time that I do another cut. I want you guys to learn from my mistakes so that way you don't have to make them yourself and waste that time. Also, I did want to mention that I still am looking for a few people that want one-on-one coaching for free. So just fill out that link in the description and we can get started. Now, number one, don't cut if you don't have to. As you can see in these pictures, I made a very big mistake. I want to give you guys a few, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. I bulked up to this point, right? Because I genuinely believe that if I wasn't gaining a pound or 2 pounds per week, I wasn't putting on any muscle. And that is the first thing that I want you guys to know. That's a mistake that I made. I believed that whenever I didn't really need to, right? However, if you're watching this video, more than likely, you probably do have to cut, right? Or else you wouldn't be watching this video. However, people that I recommend cutting, people that are like me, you bulked way too much, you clearly put on way more body fat than you needed to, so now you're gonna cut. Or if you're completely skinny fat, clearly more than 20% body fat, you don't have any muscle, or even if just, anybody that has more than 20% body fat, then you should cut. And then from there, even if you don't have muscle, get to a healthy body fat percentage, then start building muscle from there. And I guess that was point number one. But yeah, number two, and I want to expand on this a little bit later in the video. I actually made a video about this, is that you're going to look worse before you look better. And this is something that I really struggle with, and I feel like a lot of people going into this, whenever I started cutting, right? What I mean by this is that a lot of the times whenever you're fat, all of this, you're not necessarily hanging on to extra body fat. A lot of it is water weight because of sodium, because you're holding on to a lot of glycogen in your muscles, right? When you're eating a lot, very likely you're eating a lot of carbs. Carbs make you retain water. And as soon as you start cutting, even if you're still eating carbs, you're eating less, meaning that you're eating less carbs. So your body will start flushing out a lot of water, right? That is why usually in the beginning, fat loss is a lot easier, it's a lot quicker. However, especially if you start somewhere like I did, as someone that was bulky, clearly I had muscle, but clearly I had a lot of body fat as well. I lost at least 10 to 15 pounds in the first couple of months, and that was crazy. That was a lot. I was like, wow, this is easy. However, at the same time, that came with a lot of what I like to call body dysmorphia, right? Or not necessarily body dysmorphia, but I didn't really like the way I was looking. Even though I was technically getting leaner, I wasn't looking any better. Why? Because I'm not as full. As you can see, even right now, and while I'm filming this video, right, I'm nowhere near 145 pounds anymore. I'm more like 155 morning weight. However, I look a lot fuller. I'm not nearly as lean as I was at 145 pounds, but I'm not nearly as fat as I was 180 pounds. But I still do look leaner. Not leaner, but I look fuller. That's what I'm saying, right? Why? Because my body is retaining more water. Not only that, I'm taking creatine and I'm, eating a lot more carbs, which makes me look a lot fuller, makes my muscles look bigger, rounder. And I think this is where the word flat comes into play, right? So next time that you're doing a cut, I want you guys to understand that you're gonna look worse before you look better, right? There was a very big period of time during these 6 months where I looked worse. I didn't look any better, right? I was getting smaller, I looked flat. So not only did I not look as lean as I wanted to, because I wasn't as lean and as vascular, I wasn't lean enough to look vascular, but at the same time, I looked flatter, I looked smaller, I looked like I didn't even work out. So keep that in mind whenever you're starting a cutting phase. This is more for like my people that already have some kind of lifting experience. Take your time, but not too much. More often than not, of course, people will want to do things too quickly. However, I think the phrase slow, smooth is fast is definitely applies to something like this. And what I mean is that usually, right, especially if you're 20+% body fat, you're gonna lose a lot of weight in the first couple months, just like I did. Once you start getting closer to 15% body fat and you're trying to get leaner and leaner, it becomes a lot harder to lose those last few pounds, right? Of course, whenever you're super fat, your body naturally wants to let go a lot of that body fat. But it's once you start getting leaner and leaner, your body wants to hold on to it as opposed to doing that. And I think a big mistake that I did is that I took my time, right? However, I think it was definitely a little bit too long, right? Now, the longer that it usually takes, the smaller that the calorie deficit that you have to be in, and the easier it is to maintain. However, it doesn't mean that you have to take a whole year to lose 30 pounds of fat, right? You can easily lose that in 3 to 4 months if you really, really wanted to. However, the point that I'm making here is that it's okay. You should always expect to, have fat loss come a lot quicker in the beginning phase, but as soon as you start getting to 15, 14, 13% body fat, you want to be okay with seeing the fat loss slow down. And this is a mistake that I did, because when you start seeing this, what I did is that I completely cut my calories again and again and again. However, that is not how fat loss works, or that is not the optimal way to do it. As opposed to just continuing to cut your calories in half, cut it down by another 200, another 300, or another 400 max. But don't just cut your calories completely in half because you're not seeing the same rate of fat loss as you did a month or two ago. Because like I said, once you start getting leaner and leaner, your body wants to hold on to a little bit more fat, so fat loss is going to be naturally slower. But instead of cutting your calories in half, which is just not it's number one, it's not going to accelerate fat loss because your body's going to think that we're lacking of food, we're lacking of energy, I need to retain as much body fat as possible. Of course, if you cut your calories in half, you're going to lose weight at some point, right? There's no way that your body's just going to adapt to that and still retain that body fat. However, the point is that it's not going to be optimal because you're not going to have energy, you're not going to feel any better, you're not going to look any better. You're better off milking out each small, not increment, but each small deficit that you keep on going down and milking that out. Like until you stop losing body fat at 2,000 calories, there's no reason why you should go down to 1,800, even if it's very, very slow, because that way it's going to be a lot easier. You're giving your body enough time to actually adjust to that, as opposed to just cutting it in half and then just making it go crazy. And number three, leaner is not always better. If you're skinny fat, right, I think 12, maybe 11% body fat, 10 for some people is more than enough, right? Once you get to around that percentage of body fat, which is kind of like where I am in these pictures at 145 pounds, is when it starts to become a lot less of a productive activity, or it starts to, you start to get a lot less return on your investment. Why? Because it starts to get to a point where you're lacking energy. Even though you are looking better, you're lacking energy, you have no pumps, and on top of that, more importantly, you're not growing. At some point, you're gonna have to stop cutting, because in a cutting phase, you're not giving your body enough energy, calories, to actually build leaner and new muscle tissue. And at some point, not only is your body not even gonna have enough calories to build muscle tissue, like let alone that, you're not gonna be even able to function properly, which is what happened to me. I was lethargic, I was lazy. Why? Not because I wasn't lean enough. I was pretty lean. However, it was the complete opposite. It was the complete opposite effect. You want to see it as a spectrum. Over here, you're super fat, super lethargic, you have no energy. And over here, you're super, super lean, super shredded. But at the same time, you have no energy because your body is struggling to regulate hormones, that kind of thing. So once you get to 11, 10% body fat, there's no reason why you should stay there. You should go up to maintenance. That way you can continue building more muscle, that kind of thing. And on top of that, if you're skinny fat, once you get to 11% body fat, there's no reason why you should even try to continue to get leaner, because either way, you don't have much muscle to show off in the first place. Time is your most valuable asset, so as opposed to spending another 3 months just trying to lose 1% body fat, when it's not gonna make you look better, it's just gonna make you feel less energized, you're not gonna make any gains. Instead of doing that, spend that month going back to a maintenance phase and then main gaining from there. As opposed to, I'm not saying that you should bulk up, I really don't recommend that. I'm not a very big advocate for that anymore. I recommend you just staying at maintenance and increasing your calories as you go on, or I guess you could call that a lean bulk. Because this way you're giving your body more than enough energy to maintain, but on top of that, just enough energy to continue building lean tissue without putting on extra fat. So time is your most valuable asset. Don't spend it just losing another percentage of body fat when it's not even going to make you look any better, because you're not building any more muscle. You probably don't have a lot of muscle in the first place. So yeah. And just to end off this video, I don't want to rant for a whole hour. I could if I really wanted to. However, these are just a few extra tips which I wanted to share. Cardio is not your enemy. Cardio is not going to burn muscle. It's not going to do that. But it's also not the fire, right? Do your cardio the easiest form of cardio. If you don't like playing sports, you don't like running, you don't like boxing, nothing like that, just do the easiest cardio that everyone does, but not enough of: walking. Just getting 10,000 steps every single day is just gonna benefit not just your overall health, you know, your mobility, that kind of thing, get you moving throughout the day, but it's gonna make sure that you're burning some kind of extra calories throughout the day. So that way, these calories stack up at the end of the week, and it makes it a lot easier for you to stay lean. Don't knock out cardio. Maybe just do a 15% incline walk at the end of your workout sessions. It's literally just 15 minutes every single day. What is that, like not even 2 hours, 3 hours of doing cardio a week? It really costs you nothing. And finally, another quick tip, which is another rabbit hole that you could get yourself into if you're not informed enough. Daily changes do not matter nearly as much as weekly changes. Why? Because even if you were in a caloric deficit for the whole day, but let's say you just decided, maybe you went on a walk or you did something that put you outside of your comfort zone, or maybe it's just hot and you decided to drink a gallon of water before you went to bed, you're going to very likely be heavier the next morning as you were the night before. Not necessarily because you put on fat, but just because your body has more fluids inside of it that have not been flushed out. And this just can just make you, you know, lead to rabbit holes, you know, putting yourself down, telling yourself that you're not doing something right. Instead, look at your weekly average, right? And if that's lower than last week, then you're doing something good. Don't just focus on the daily changes. Hope this helped you guys. I do have a few other videos that go a little bit deeper into some of the ideas that I covered in this video, especially the one about you're gonna look worse before you look better. I made a pretty good video about that. But yeah, you guys just go check that out. Remember, there is that link in the description if you do want to work one-on-one with me for free for the next 30 days, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.